began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.
began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.
began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.
began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.
We are live. First off, let me get a voice check, Ken.
Voicing check, checking the voice.
And Steve.
Voice check, Steve. Voice check, Steve.
Okay, guys, can you hear us? Give me some feedback. Blue Troopers, make sure we are audible. And it'll take a little bit of time to get the feedback back. Actually, you know what? I can probably just turn the volume up here. Yep, I can hear me.
John Ashley Smith says, didn't realize that, but from Frankenstein, the monster's more human than the humans.
Okay, we're 5x5. All right, guys. Well, welcome to another scintillating episode of Max's Models. And tonight we're going to be talking about, starting off anyway, talking about all those monsters that we loved or scared the crap out of us as kids, which...
First, I want to make a public service announcement before we continue.
Okay.
To all you Blue Troopers out there, anybody who sends anything to Max, please put an inventory slip in the box so he does not throw away the box and leave something in it that you had sent him. So if you could kindly put on top of everything you pack a small piece of paper listing what is in the box. That would be greatly appreciated by Monica and the guy who picks up his trash.
He's not wrong. This beautiful...
Did you recover the sign?
Huh?
Yes, he did. See, it's
behind me.
There it is. Okay, so you went and got the trash, huh?
Recycle. It was flat at the bottom of his car. I just looked down and saw a cardboard, thought the box was empty, but it was in there. But fortunately, the recycle doesn't come till Tuesday. And by the way, thank you for that, Steve. That's I'm not 100% where I'm not 100% sure. I guess I'll put it up in the Tarbis. I don't know if I have any space. I do have some space here in the office, but actually, you know what? I think I'm going to put it on the shelf. I'm going to put it down on the display shelf behind the Godzillas.
Why don't you put it over the toilet that the snake went in?
Because they're both reptiles that might attract more snakes.
Yeah.
By the way, guys, before we get started, I got the little submarine it seems to be holding using the white glue, which just, the white glue didn't bite into anything. You just created a cement bond around it. But this is our little souvenir from the Museum of Chicago Museum of Science and Industry from D505.
Says, even better, send them an empty box. It'll take them hours to look for what is in the box.
Yeah, tell me there's five items and only put 4 in there. Yeah, that'll do it. I'm not 100% sure. I got a bunch of stuff from a bunch of different people that kind of prompted the idea for this week's subject to start off with, which is the monsters. And I just threw these Aurora kits up here. But anyway, the idea was... What are you giggling at?
Daniel Britton says, Invasion of the Saucermen terrorized my brother. Oh, okay.
Hey, this is actually what it was about. I was terrified by some of these movies when I was a kid, and to me, good Hollywood. I mean, really good sci-fi and monster movies will traumatize you as a child. Just get you ready for the real world. I was going. What I figured we talk about was the monster kits in general, not just the Aurora kits, but any of them, because Pegasus and other companies are doing them, MB and others. And we'll talk about the movies that terrified you and the models that terrified you. Did you build them? Do you want to? I got to be honest with you. That Godzilla you see over my shoulder, which is the Polar Lights kit, I love building. It's a great kit. The seams are kind of big on it. But when I first got done with it, I didn't have a place to put it, so I put it in the bedroom in the old house, up on top of the shelf, and the walls were white, and it was up on top of the shelf, so it was perfectly silhouetted. In fact, I had all my Godzillas lined up there. The rest are just pre-made things. And, I'd be waking up in the middle of the night, looking up and seeing the outline of that thing, and I'm like, God, I'm glad I didn't paint glow-in-the-dark eyes on it, be 60 years old, and it's still nightmare fuel, which is a wonderful thing, because... It's good to have things that get your juices flowing. And when I was a kid, I've told you guys the story before. I was about 8 years old when I saw the original Godzilla on our black and white Zenith with my dad, the one with Raymond Burr, the American cut. And that wasn't API that brought it. AIP that imported it, was it?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't.
But anyway, I couldn't stop watching it, but it terrified the crap out of me. What?
X-Files are truly terrifying.
Hey. There's a limit to anything, okay? There's a part when it goes from fun terror to genuine terror, and you know, we're talking about fun terror here.
There's a difference.
We're not. Fortunately, I don't have an ex-wife. Never will, because I married perfectly. Because I know she's watching. But anyway.
Or she'd kill you if she thought you were going to think about having another one.
Well, she's already showed me the pictures going on the milk carton.
Yeah. Yeah, she's got them ready to go.
They're ready, you know. It's my Hollywood headshot. They'll never recognize me. For those who don't know, I did a brief stint as an actor. So anyway, I know you all find that shocking, but and
it was not a horror movie.
Until they showed me. But a lot of the old movies, I loved watching those old, I guess you would call them B black and white horror films from the 50s. What was that one about the giant worms in the reservoir, the creature that threatened the earth or something? I always forget the titles of them.
Monster that challenged the world.
The monster that challenged the world. And of course, as I love when they watch MSTK 3000 and roll the stock footage, you know. And one of my favorites was Deadly Mantis, you know, about the giant praying mantis. And one of the things I loved about it, it was almost an advertisement for the Cold War that starts off, you know, where once there was nothing, now there is, you know, civilization. The dew line, the defense early warning line, and they're showing all the stuff that went up in outer Canada, you know, to build the dew line and Pine Tree and all those things. And I think it's Cambot or one of them just says, after all this, how could we really bring ourselves to disarm? But, and also when they give him the pull chocks or whatever sign, and he's like, Hail Ming, you know, and the jets are taking off formation. Oh, the new codependent Air Force.
Puppets still creep me out.
A lot of people still freak out about clowns. If you ever watch the show Supernatural, you know, the vampire hunting, werewolf killing brothers scared of clowns. But because of childhood trauma. But I loved it. And a buddy of mine, Jim, childhood best friend, when, 7, 8, 9 years old, he had every Aurora kit he could. His whole upper shelf was lined with them, and half of them were glow in the dark. So when I'd stay over at his house, I'd always just roll over and put my back to it and try to go to sleep. And he was always watching vampire movies and stuff. I was 8 years old. But that's a fun thing to wake up to. But over time, I got to love this stuff. By the time I was a teenager, I loved these movies. Of course, that's back when I used to think Hammer films were bloody. But now I look back, I realize what Jim some more. What was that Terror Express, the one with Cushing and Savalas, and we're on the train. Horror Express. God, I love that movie. I mean, Telly Savalas, say whatever you think of Telly Savalas, man, he really owned that part. And but I love Peter Cushing. One of my favorite lines in all Hollywood when he's talking about, anybody's a suspect. He goes, "What about you?" "Not us, man. By God, we're British." Very possibly the most British thing ever said. But I realized some of those movies are actually real gems. And Vincent Price. When the Dr. Phibes movies came out, you couldn't drag me to see one of those. Oh no, Dr. Phibes, he's so terrible. A lot of people say it still is the most terrifying character. Yet I go back and watch it now and realized, you watch any movie with Vincent Price, and God bless that guy, he, no matter how bad or good the material, he never phoned it in. He put his heart into every part he portrayed, and he actually could be a very commanding actor in those roles, very convincing. And,
yep.
It's been said that the role that he played, which no one's done a model of, and I think it would actually, a lot of people wouldn't catch the reference, but it would be a good one. Was it the Witch Chaser General or something like that?
The Witchfinder General.
Witchfinder, because apparently, unlike all of his other roles, where no matter how villainous the character, he imbued them with a certain sympathy or a certain charm. And that movie, he never cracked a smile. He was dour and serious the whole time. The character was probably his darkest character, and he was a regular human. Which makes you understand who the real monsters are. But, and that would make an interesting character, because he's actually, my understanding, there's some historical value to him also. But, getting to the monsters, this is the one that kicked it off. Frankenstein, the Aurora not this particular glow-in-the-dark box art, but the Aurora Frankenstein kit is the one that really. And by the way, guys, I've got my Aurora Monster Scenes book here in case we need to reference anything from Aurora, just so if I get stumped, I don't have to go tearing up the bookcase.
Dial Killer up.
Hmm?
Dial Killer up.
Hey, is he a horror guy?
Who worked at Aurora, remember?
Well, he was in the car department.
No, he was in charge of all the model development.
Okay, I'm sorry. When I think of Jim, I always just think of cars, model cars, even though he did a lot more than that. Yeah.
Frank Sabo says that, trying to scroll off. I gotta go back. Killer tomatoes is why I don't eat tomatoes.
Frickle strike back. Well, they say that heart attacks are nature's revenge for eating all of God's furry little creatures. But by the way, guys, if you will look over my shoulder here, you will notice on the table behind me, I not only have my big Polar Lights Godzilla, but I also have the UFO that I built in about 5 minutes. That is a super easy build. I didn't put the interior in because I might make room for a lighting set later, but and I figured that interior might be handy for something else. But I put it there like that for a reason because, as I was telling the guys beforehand, we're going to talk about this later. I would love to make a Godzilla versus the Aliens movie. I know the Japanese have already done that, but I would like to do one, with using something out of canon, like like the Invaders Aliens or something like that. And because I can tell you right now, my Godzilla is going to crush that flying saucer before it can take off. They're going to rue the day they landed on Monster Island. But there you go, Invaders versus UFO Invaders versus Monster Island. I'd pay money to see that. Which, by the way, the new Godzilla movie looks pretty promising.
Out of the entire planet to pick the land, you land in the one place.
No, not it can. It's got it. They got it. I've already got it worked out. They do it on purpose because they think they can control Godzilla like those Zillions or whatever thought, and you saw how it ended for them. But this would be an opportunity just to have some fun with old American iconic sci-fi and Japanese sci-fi and put it together. And they say that Godzilla never eats people. That's one of the things that Toho says. He's got to have like 3 fingers and a thumb, 4 toes. There's so many 3 rows of spines, and he doesn't eat people. But aliens aren't people. They're little delicious radioactive chewy bites.
Now this wasn't scary, but it was kind of along the same lines. Remember Mars Attacks? Jack Nicholson.
That was a better movie than it had any right to be.
It was hilarious.
It was.
I laughed all the way through that thing.
I would love to make
so
a Godzilla Aliens comedy like that. Oh my God, I would love to do that.
I have the trading cards for Mars Attacks.
Trading cards?
Yes, they were trading cards.
Hey, just so you guys know, just to be prepared, I keep that Slim Whitman song on my phone, just in case. You never know.
What's that?
That's the one Indian love call that he's singing that blows their heads up in Mars Attacks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, gummit, Ken. Now you said that, I should have used that song on the intro. Well, guess what video I'll be working on tomorrow, guys? Frankie, and I'm not going to go into the story because you guys all know it, but super quick, I think 65, I think is when it came out, and they were almost laughed out of the hobby industry show until the last day, and that's when everybody could bring their kids, and all the kids went ape, and all the people realized it was this is the problem with adults picking toys. They really don't think like kids. They think they know what kids like, but only kids know what kids like, and half the time kids don't even know what they like. But this they loved. So, and it kicked off the whole thing. So, they did, and they found out that Universal had let the rights expire so they could get all these things cheap. So they go The Mummy, they do Dracula.
Hey, Steve?
Yes?
Daniel Britton has some trading cards. Maybe you could trade with him.
I'm not trading mine.
Ha!
I got
Maybe he's got something you don't have. Oh, you got the whole set.
I got the whole set and the book.
The book.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mummy, Wolfman,
Garfield hit it on the
Dracula.
head. Parents had them taken off the market because they were considered too violent.
Yeah. Parents. Darn it. These kids and their rock and roll music. And the fourth one might have been Black Lagoon. I forget the exact order, but they put out like 4 of them in pretty quick succession. And
Ray said, my scariest monster was my drill instructor.
you are a dud, son. You are an unexploded ordnance.
What about you?
Where King Kong eats native, steps on native, and eats a guy in a dinner jacket.
But these movies never scared me, but I liked them. I never considered them really, well, not very scary anyway. I mean, they were a little scary, but they were almost like more fun than they were scary. But I came to realize that in each of these cases, and we've talked about this on the channel before, these are actually somewhat sympathetic creatures. I mean, the Black Lagoon was in minding his own business in his swamp when, let's be honest, Whitey shows up and ruins the neighborhood.
He was horny. That was it.
Huh? He was just horny.
Horny.
As a young man, I could completely sympathize. The mummy was sleeping in his tomb till he was disturbed. The Wolfman didn't ask to get bit. Not so sure. Jury's out on Dracula. Cursing God in a church, good way to get turned into a vampire, I guess. And we all know that poor old Quasimodo was a sympathetic cat. I think a lot of teenagers really identify with Quasimodo, feeling like the odd man out. And I don't even really consider that a horror movie. But and I was also surprised how popular this kit is. You go to the Comic-Cons and stuff, or the Modelpalooza, you usually see a couple of them. It's still a fairly popular kit. Never really appealed to me personally, but and the people do really nice jobs with it too. And it's funny, you look at the jobs they do, they're really able, even with the old Aurora pressings, they're really able to make a very sad and sympathetic character out of him. Then you got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and let's be honest, with the amount of self-abusive medicines that doctors do, I'm pretty sure he exists today in numbers. Not trying to bash the medical community, but come on.
Where'd it go? Oh, John Ashley Smith said Frankenstein didn't ask to be created.
This is true. Frankie is arguably the most sympathetic of all of them. He was resting in peace before multiple graves were disturbed. I mean, Dr. first off, this is Frankenstein's monster. This isn't Frankenstein. This is Frankenstein's monster. Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein was the real monster, yeah? Don't play. What was that Twilight Zone episode? Don't play with dead things.
That sounds like good advice.
Well, you see these movies, and you're convinced that no one in a horror movie has ever seen a horror movie. Rule number 1, never go off alone. Rule number 2, never investigate the sound in the dark. Rule number 3...
Or going to a dark basement.
Come on, man. It's like, look, you people deserve to die just for being stupid.
Have you seen the commercial? I think it's for Geico.
Yes, it's hilarious.
The kids are like out by a haunted house and they go, "What should we do?" Well, let's get in the running car and go away.
That's exactly what they expect.
Chainsaws that are hanging up in the garage. Yeah, that's a good choice.
Yeah, let's hide in that garage full of sharp, farming implements. And the psychos looking at them like, okay, these kids deserve to die. Yeah. And you know what? In this case, I'm on his side.
They're not worth it.
Yeah, that is a great commercial. They had one. It was, I forget what a commercial is, a movie I think where it's the typical pretty girl in the house by herself and someone scared her on the phone, and she sees somebody trying to get through the door, and she looks down on the counter, there's like a Beretta 9mm, a kukri knife, and a banana, and she grabs the banana.
There you go.
Here in Jacksonville, where I live, which has got quite a few gun stores, Years ago, one of the local gun shops did a commercial that was freaking hilarious because they dealt with some of the Class 3 stuff, the full auto and suppressed stuff. And they did a surprisingly high-quality local commercial where the girl picks up, I know you're in the house. He comes to the door. She reaches the closet, pulls out a rock and roll legit M16 and goes full rock and roll on him. Come to Shooter Supplies. We got everything you need. And I'm kind of like, okay, I don't care what you think. I'm guaranteeing you that got them some business. And the more people outside complaining with picket signs, the better business gets.
Trace suggests don't wear a red shirt.
Well, that's in sci-fi, but you know what? As a general precaution, I have to agree. They had an episode of Stargate they actually had where two guest scientists, and one of them was the guy that played Dr. Phlox in Enterprise. They get stuck on a alien vessel, and they're like, oh, we're gonna get killed. Everything he goes, why don't you just give me a red shirt? He goes, you know, I do not understand your pop culture references, but you might as well give me a red shirt. This one, again, not so much a horror character. He's more of a Hannibal Lecter type, you know, the Phantom of the Opera. Because I guess we break these monsters down into two categories. Sick people and supernatural, or maybe three, sci-fi. What, Ken?
Lance Rudolph says the zombie movie set in rural Texas would be a very short movie. The zombies wouldn't stand a chance, all the gun owners.
Yeah. Well, did you guys ever see it's on, I don't think it's on Netflix, but they have these like 2 or 3 minute like fan films that they'll actually show, and one of them's called Mini Zombie Apocalypse, and it's like animated, but everything's miniature, and it's almost like you're watching Lego people, and a zombie apocalypse breaks out all over the world. And it shows the French and everybody in Canada. You see they're going across a hockey rink in a Zamboni running over zombies, you know, like dragging blood across the ring. But it shows Texas, and it's like, yeah, cowboys right there just doing drive-by shootings and everything against the zombies. If you guys, probably on YouTube, Mini Zombie Apocalypse, I think is the name of it. It's like 3 minutes long, and because everything's moving fast, and they're all like miniature, moving faster than normal, they'll have high-pitched voices. And like the president's like, what? Zombies? Not on my watch. And he's launching nukes on his own soil and everything. And you just have to see it. But it was freaking hilarious.
See, the thing that always gets me about zombie movies or like The Walking Dead or that kind of stuff, they always sneak up on them. They're dead. You'd smell them a mile away.
Yeah. Well, Steve, it's funny you should mention that. When the zombie movies like World War Z and those got real popular, people like asking, why are zombies so popular? And the simple fact is, we all have a part of our brain that wants to be stimulated by fear. It's healthy, actually. What happens is, zombies, unlike other creatures, have no survival instinct. They're dead. So you can't intimidate them, you can't scare them, you can't stop them. You have to kill them. And if they're moving in large numbers, or in like World War Z, they can move fast, and that's just bloody terrifying. Because, you know, if you can't stop them, that's just it. So they talked about, for that reason, zombies are more terrifying than most monsters. Now this one, The Forgotten Prisoner of Castle Mar, how we say that? This one, the thing that makes this one so terrible is this probably actually happened to somebody. I'm sure there were prisoners in some Bastille somewhere that were just forgotten about. And that's a genuinely horrifying thought, because there's nothing supernatural about it. And that's probably actually happened to people. And then, of course, King Kong.
That happens to be a really good selling kit, believe it or not.
And it's still in production.
I mean, that does very well, that kit, today.
I know. I see it on the shops everywhere I go. And, of course, I really don't have to get into the kaiju. You know, King Kong and Godzilla are self-explanatory. And yes, that monogram mold is the old Aurora mold. It's one of them they got from Aurora, and they got the license and cranked it out for a while. If you get the monogram kit, I don't know what they go for on eBay, but they're not that common. I don't know how long Monogram made them. You might want to just build a repop and keep that one in the box.
Just build the Atlantis kit. That's what
I mean, to build the Atlantis kit.
Yeah.
The Witch is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, their worst selling kit. It's the only one that actually lost money. And the reason they say that they believe it lost money was it was the only one that was not part of some kind of franchise and didn't have any historical significance. So, people like, what's this? All the others they recognize from the movies. And they basically run out of movie creatures. So, let's just make something up. We won't have to pay any royalties because it's a creature of our own creation. Well, guess what? You don't have to pay royalties, which is a good thing because they didn't sell worth a flip. So, but the one that terrified me. What?
I just thought something. I wanted to say this during the break, but my mind went blank. My favorite has always been the zombie killers. The ammo.
I
always thought that was amusing.
Yes, you can buy zombie killer ammo. When everybody got sensitive about what they were calling ammunition, they gave it names like zombie killer, and there were people who complained about that. Yeah, actually, there were people who did, but some people are just going to complain. The flying saucer, obviously we talked about earlier from the invaders, terrified the crap out of it, which is ironic because the ones from the TV show UFO never did, but I was older when I saw that. The
interesting thing about the invaders is that they never looked like they were not in humanoid form.
Yeah, apparently they made themselves look like humans, but that's not what they normally looked like.
But you never saw what they.
We never saw. Well, it was a Quinn Martin production. He usually did detective shows like Barnaby Jones and Mannix, and I think those were all Quinn Martin. You can always tell the Quinn Martin shows calls Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, and Epilogue.
Nathan Bond said something really cool. He says, it's interesting you can tell by horror movies and thriller movies where society's fears are.
There's a lot of truth in that. A lot of people say that War of the Worlds, when it came out in the early 50s, which is still one of my favorite movies ever, that it was basically just a metaphor for nuclear war. Now, as I'm sure many of you know...
A lot of the 50s movies, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, they were supposed to be talking about the Russians and invasion and war with the Russians.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And now we're doing horror movies about computers taking over.
Which, by the way, I'm just afraid those may be more prophetic. But Ken, since you bring that up, the first movie that really did well getting into that, and I got it right here, was Terminator.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, we still talk about Skynet.
No, the Demon Seed.
Actually, the first movie I remember about the computers taking over was Colossus.
Which was a great movie.
It is, very much so. And this is why a follow-on to Colossus in some ways might be the Netflix series Westworld, which is way past the old movie Westworld, which was a great movie. I'm sure most of you guys have seen it with Yul Brynner, where nothing can go wrong. But the AI there had just gone bad. In the new Westworld, the AI is actually starting to take over. They're trying to impress human consciousness into these machines. Turns out that's really the reason the whole Delos project exists. And they definitely expanded far beyond the original premise. And it's concerning because I don't know if true AI is actually possible. That's still a subject of some debate. But when people like, I'm not a big Bill Gates fan, but when even guys like Gates and Elon and others like that, even the late Stephen Hawking are saying, look, the AI actually figures, really becomes AI. The first thing it may figure is it doesn't need the humans. They're in the way. And remember, it's off on.
What AI is right now is actually, it has no creative capability. What it does is just it scans the internet for what everybody else has done.
Yeah, it's imitation, it's mimicry. But Terminator was one of the first. Colossus and then Terminator. The only reason Colossus was powerful because he controlled the nuclear arsenal. But the Terminator is because the average person in Colossus, he was dealing with governments. The average person in Colossus didn't see much change in their day-to-day life. Society went on because that's what Colossus was there to ensure, even if you had to nuke some people to do it. But in Terminator, it was actually, kill the humans, kill the humans. You guys remember Futurama when Bender is snoring, sleeping? I'm going to kill all humans.
Yeah. Yep.
And when you see through his visor, what he sees, you see little crosshairs on people saying target, target.
Jeez, Fry. That brings. I think one of the reasons AI is so terrifying is that the odds of an alien invasion are virtually non-existent. Operative word, virtually. But something like Terminator, that could really happen, and I will tell you how. This book that I got from Rhonda Firko, 7 Seconds to Die. It's about the Nagorno-Karabakh War, which my guess is most of you never even heard of. Happened just a couple of years ago. But it's an area between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And the Azerbaijanis just absolutely mopped the floor with the Armenians. Took the entire area in a very decisive and short war. And it was almost completely done with drones. So, anybody, I guarantee you military leaders around the world are looking very closely at that, because just like the Monitor and the Merrimack or the CSS Virginia made every ship in every navy obsolete in a single battle, just like the dive bombers at Midway proved that the day of and at Pearl Harbor proved that the day of the battleship was over. Just like nuclear weapons, prove that conventional weapons are tinker toys compared to nukes. These paradigm shifting technologies, the microchip and the drone have put us. Seriously, that war is a lot like Terminator. The hunter-killer drones, the only thing missing were the robotic foot soldiers. And it's both incredible because the Azerbaijanis took surprisingly few casualties, obviously, and it's also terrifying. Terminator may be, minus hopefully the nuclear war, but the technology, it may be in some ways one of the most prescient movies made. So build your Terminator kits today, boys and girls, while you still can.
Well, it's also very similar to Isaac Asimov's I, Robot.
Yes, but the Asimovs prevented them from hurting people. In Terminator, they had no Asimovs. They had anti-Asimovs. Kill the people.
No. In I, Robot, they were. I guess they weren't killing them, but they were. Yeah, but still, they were taking over. That in itself is kind of terrifying.
Well, Vicky was basically just being a tough love parent. I know some humans may die, but it's a price I'm willing to pay to save the rest of you. Now, you're all going to eat yogurt and algae for the rest of your lives, and I'll live to be 100, sitting still in a chair.
Thank you, Mr. Gates.
Yeah. But, actually, the character from I, Robot would make an interesting kit. Nobody's made one that I'm aware of. Not even a... Alan Tudyk voiced him and did the motion cap, and I thought he did a great job. I like that movie. That's another one of my favorite movies. Will Smith, that was a role that was made for him. Detective Spooner.
Well, the Will Smith movie that you saw was actually a conglomeration of several I, Robot books.
Well, Asimov wrote a series of short stories which have been turned under the title Foundation, which have been turned into the series Foundation. My wife and I watched it. It's excellent, but it's Asimov. And it gets into robotics as well as everything else. And only Demerzel had her Asimovs removed, so whoa, man, do not get in her way. When you think about robotics, though, I got to take back what I said earlier, guys. There's one before that. One of the very first, Fritz Lang's Metropolis. Maria.
Oh, yeah.
The killer robot, So, this idea goes back. Ken, you probably know this, and I'm probably going to get it wrong, and I'm sure one of the Glue Troopers will correct me. But you know what the word robot, how it came about.
Oh my God! I just realized something.
What?
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 Gavin Newsom's a robot.
No, he's not. He's not a robot. Okay, guys, he's not a robot. He's a lizard person. Keep it straight. Which, by the way, is an insult to robots.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Lord, keep it straight. Don't confuse the robots with the lizard people. That's one of the things.
I don't remember.
Oh gosh!
I think I knew it at one time, but I can't remember where the term robot came from.
I don't need for 3 laws safe. Hold on just a second. Okay, it's a Slavic word.
Says,
okay.
Yes, Maria. I actually have a model of her.
Yeah, they came out with a really nice one. It's kind of expensive, but I saw it at the last Model Palooza, I think it was, and Steve Iverson had one, and from Cult TV Man, he had like one of the prototypes or something really nice. Okay, robot is drawn from an old church Slavic word robota for servitude or forced labor or drudgery. So, and a lot of us don't realize we actually have robots, and I'm not just talking about your Roomba, although that would qualify. But a lot of the machines we have are robotic. I mean, a lot of the cars are made largely robotic. I actually, a couple of years ago, got to tour the Ford truck factory at Red River, and man, you used to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people on the floor. Now you got dozens, because so much of it is done robotically now. And in all fairness, for repetitive drudge work, I mean, I fly a largely robotic airplane.
Yeah, there's a lot of systems that do stuff. Well, the original artificial intelligence started way back in the beginning of computers. The idea being that just about anything could be artificial intelligence. I mean, you could wire a box that if you push one button, the light goes on. If you push another button, the light goes off. You don't know what's going on inside of there, but it's extremely simple, but it's artificial intelligence from a pure point of view. What we think of AI now is just an incredible expansion of that.
Yes.
It's just making decisions based on what somebody told it to do.
And even with quantum computing, you're still dealing with something. Of course, even in quantum computing, they can't create, but they can amalgamate. They can assume. Of course,
right. There's no creativity in it. There's just drawing on other people's information and creating things from that, making assumptions and deductions.
Hey, Kronos, a giant box-shaped robot. I do remember Kronos. That's another one I used to enjoy watching. They land the helicopter on it, the Mexican Air Force comes in their P-51Bs to strafe it. And Kronos was...
That robot with some early Democratic supporters.
So one of the Glue Troopers actually made, I think he scratch-made a Kronos for one of the viewers' builds a while back. He also did that scuba helmet on the gorilla suit robot, whatever it was, from...
Robot Monster.
Robot Monster. I mean, I cannot bring myself to have anything but respect for people who, on these wafer-thin budgets, cobble together this really schlocky sci-fi. There is something about it that is just adorable. I'd make, if somebody said, Max, you're going to start a model company, you're going to make a robot, you're going to make a sci-fi, that's probably the one I would pick, not only because it'd be easy to make, but just because it's so, even though it's so bad, it's made with so much heart. And besides, who's to say what a robot monster would look like? Even if it falls in love with a girl and fails in its mission. Heck, half the time they had reasonably good ideas.
I was wondering when somebody was going to mention Forbidden Planet.
Oh, you mean only the greatest sci-fi movie ever that completely established the prototype for television shows even today?
Robot ever?
Oh, heck yeah, Robbie. The prototypical servant robot, the command triumvirate made up of the doctor, the first officer, and the captain, which is a staple of science fiction today. Well, all Star Treks are set up that way. Absolutely. In fact, there's so many throwback. It's so important that if you remember when Joss Whedon made the follow-on to Firefly, the movie Serenity. When they're going in the station, you see the crashed ship in the side of the building, and they go downstairs in big letters on the wall, like the station number is C-57D. And you know that's a Easter egg for Forbidden Planet.
I didn't know that.
Oh, Ken, you disappoint me. I spotted that immediately. And
No, didn't catch that.
but and of course the C-57D model's still out there too. Another piece of great sci-fi.
In different sizes.
Yes, but the thing about that is it's one of those movies that it took science fiction seriously. Some of the sci-fi was pretty, I don't know what the word, childish. But that one was actually a very, very, it was a serious attempt to make a real movie, not to make, popcorn for kids. It was, for the time, a grown-up movie. And we were talking about zombie flicks. MB has put out this this kit, and I have not seen one in the real world. But I noticed it was 1/35 scale, so you can put all your armor with it. Since most armor is 1/35 scale. And you could have a lot of fun with that. And she's riding what looks like an old military motorcycle. They're, by the way, just as a side note, they're doing another Walking Dead. I don't forget if it's a show or a movie, but this time it's Daryl Goes to England. So it's like rednecks in England and zombies. What's not to love?
Oh, well, we should have a liquor.
But anyway, it's, why are you letting them get so close, girlfriend? I mean, anyway, it's just
So they all fit in the picture.
Yeah, well, fair enough, Ken. Fair enough. Well,
ask Mike about that. He'll tell you.
Well, are these fast zombies or slow zombies? But the thing is that the scary franchises haven't gone away. They're still. I mean, they're not so much scary anymore. But when I was a kid, this stuff, a lot of it terrified me. But it was good for me. And I the nice thing about these old kits is, although I never really personally bought those kinds of kits, as I've said, with me, it was usually model airplanes. But it's what?
So it's Boondock Saints with zombies.
Heck yeah, baby! Hey, Boondock Saints has got an awesome soundtrack. There was a firefight. Come on, Willem, could you just a little more melodramatic? But so now the question of the Glue Troopers is: did you ever build any of these kits? And what was your preferred? Did you like kaiju? Did you like Invader? Space Invaders? Did you like the Universal monsters? What was your bag? What was your bag, man? And do you still build them? Because I still get some from time to time. And here's another question: who, in your mind, your opinion, is the most sympathetic of the monsters? With me, it's a coin toss between Frankie, who Frankenstein's monster. What?
Tom Fox says, "Do French zombies surrender?"
Of course.
You can distract them with a baguette. But
no offense to any French zombies out there watching.
Yeah. Okay, Chuck says the Invader spaceship. Yeah. Only German zombies. HAL 9000. Now, HAL 9000, I didn't think about HAL. There's an example of AI gone bad. HAL. Why
because
is
he was
it?
given conflicting
With
rules.
programmed wrong.
I want someone to explain to me how I haven't scratched my nose all day, and as soon as this live stream starts, now my nose starts itching. Hang on, I'm going to do you guys a favor here. I'm just going to kill the camera for a second. We're still live. I'm just killing the camera.
Yeah, kill the camera so you can rub your nose real good, huh?
I can neither confirm or deny the allegation, Your Honor.
Why? Just go out of frame.
Ken, I got stuff all around me here, believe it or not. I'm actually kind of trapped in this little corner here.
And then you wonder why his nose is itchy.
That made no sense. But I think the most sympathetic characters it's a coin toss between Frankenstein's monster, who never has to be made, and the creature of the Black Lagoon, who was happy living in his environment until people showed up and ruined it for him. And of course the forgotten prisoner. But we don't know why he was a prisoner. Maybe he had it coming. You could throw King Kong in there too, because he was abducted from his home. So he's up there with the creature of the Black Lagoon. And I started to realize he's not the bad guy.
This is an animal.
Yeah, and he's just doing what animals do. And it's hard. It's for that matter, so is Godzilla. And Godzilla's, got reason to be ticked off. I have come up with 4 or 5 really good, strong ideas for Godzilla movies. A couple for King Kong, some crossover stuff, several sci-fi. It seems like every time I lean to, because I like to write movie screenplays as an artistic exercise. I know none of them will ever see the light of day, but I don't care. I mean, there's like 9,000 screenplays written for one that even gets reviewed by somebody in a position to greenlight it, and like 1 in 500 actually gets to the point where it actually, gets on celluloid. And then apparently of the ones that get on celluloid, there's a 45% chance or something like that it'll never see a movie screen or television. And when I look at some of the garbage I've seen on TV, I'm like, good God, there's got to be better stuff that you guys threw away. But
you would think so.
There was a real cheesy budget sci-fi movie made in the 70s about a ship that crashes on Earth, and what it is, it's a science ship with samples of several captured creatures, like a zoo ship. And this guy, you finally realize at the end of the movie, he's actually, although you think he's human, he's actually an alien trying to round him up and get him off planet before they can kill too many people. And good concept for a movie, just very poorly executed because of the tight budget. But it had one scene that even scared the crap out of me, and that some guy goes on his own basement, turns on the light, and the creature standing behind him. Like, Jesus, I hate it when that happens. And
because you never hear them coming.
I mean, it was such a budget. It's such a budget. I think the police car was a 2-door Nova with a magnetic siren on top and the wire hanging around sticking in the cigarette lighter. But God bless them. All the local people who are hired as actors are putting their all into it.
What about the Ymir?
What?
He was abducted from his home planet.
Who?
The Ymir.
What's that?
From 20 million miles to Earth.
Oh, no, he's absolutely a sympathetic character. He was abducted from his home planet, yeah.
Yeah, they brought him to Earth. He didn't want to be there.
And he shouldn't have been. No, we brought that misery on ourselves. Well, that's just like the, you remember the Mexican-American movie, Black Scorpion?
Yeah.
That actually, we watched that many times on late night TV. And we're like, how many Chickasaw helicopters does the Mexican army have? Because he kept grabbing them and knocking them out of the sky. But that actually was not a bad movie. I mean, really, it's funny because I just watched Brandon Tenold has a very popular YouTube channel. He's a Canadian guy, has a popular YouTube channel. It's called I think it's Brandon's Cult Movie Reviews, and he did that one, and I had to agree that it was actually a pretty good movie for what it was. And I actually just the other day, before I went to work, so about 5 days ago, did some screen grabs and sent them to my brother because in one scene where they go down the cable, the American and the Mexican go down the cable, they're both carrying pistols, but the Mexican has this big machine gun that looked kind of like a Bren gun. And I was like, what the heck is that? Is that something? It turned out the Mexicans made their own machine gun, which had a top clip on it. And it was, or magazine. And it looked kind of like a British Bren gun with a full-length wood stock. And he goes, no, it was, and I actually found it on Wikipedia. Anyway. And I was like, these guys really put some effort into this production. It was actually pretty good. And the stop action, it was not Harryhausen. It was the other guy. Willis O'Brien, I think, got credit for the stop action, but I think he was just an advisor. But I mean, all things considered, Black Scorpion is not a bad movie. I mean, it's got 50 special effects, but I was like, they really tried hard on that. And, we used to watch it, grabbed a few too many. I mean, why is that helicopter getting so close? Well, of course, so the Scorpion can grab it for the, the movie and make it look cool. But still.
And it has Mara Corday.
That's right. He talks about that a lot. A beautiful actress. Sort of.
Who was she married to?
Oh God! You know what? I think he said that in the thing, and I don't remember.
Richard Long.
From The Big Valley.
Mm-hmm.
She was sort of, I guess, Mexico's answer to what was that famous Italian actress from The Green Slime?
Luciana Paluzzi.
Why I cannot? That is such a cool name, and I can never remember it. And she went from playing the hot carrying nurse to the murderess in one of the James Bond flicks.
Fiona Volpe.
Yeah. It's amazing what I can't remember what I can't.
After Thunderball.
Let's see. Super 8 is a sympathetic. I like the movie Super 8 because I shot Super 8mm movies as a kid. I identified with that movie very much. And the creature, again, was abducted. Well, he crashed here and then was imprisoned. Okay, Nathan's talking about the writer's strike. El Mariachi killing big bugs. Thunderball. Guys, no. There is no... Tarantula was great. The giant claw, that's just bad on every level. I'm sorry.
Laughable.
Yeah, I mean...
Laughable.
Those, to me, the Tarantula and Deadly Menace are over here on the... Man, they really did a decent... As a kid, I loved it because they tried. They did a decent job. Whereas the giant claw, even as a kid, I would have laughed at that. Just for creature design, if nothing else.
We could have made a better movie than the giant claw.
It's really...
Yeah, and we would have better models, too.
Hey, hold on. Steve, Ken and I already have.
Hey, I want to say something.
Yeah.
Okay. HNX model says, AI couldn't possibly write any worse than the current Schlockwood writers.
There you go.
Well, Monica Bellucci.
Monica Bellucci.
Who, okay, which one is that?
She
One
was
of God's
in,
minor jobs.
What?
She was Inspector.
Okay.
She was the wife of the Italian agent that Bond killed.
Okay. Yeah, he's fine.
That is so gross, yuck. Oh, my wife must be listening. I just got a text.
You're in trouble. So, I had something I was going to ask. We were talking about all these. I wonder if you could. Some of these characters we were making figures of. I mean, a lot of them are pretty.
There's a lot of resin figures of, characters that weren't made by model companies. Garage kits.
Well, I gotta offer a thought here, though. Now, you guys have seen me do a lot of War of the Worlds stuff, and you're probably already aware that I consider the 1950s War of the Worlds, 1953, I think. It and Godzilla were made almost the same year. May have been the same year. And I saw this movie as a kid, and any time it came on, I had to watch it. And even though it terrified the crap out of me, I didn't care. I absolutely love that movie. And the swan design of the ships with the cobra's head, it was just something incredibly classic. The set design and the fact that they used models, and I knew they were models. I mean, you could tell they were miniatures, but there was something about it that actually, and guys back me up on this or disagree with me, whatever the case may be. When you have a set like this that is clearly a miniature, but in some ways it almost seems like it adds to the surreal effect and makes it more effective than if you had gone out and, filmed it out in a real field and superimposed the stuff in later or something. It's hard to put my finger on what it is about these. The fact that they would glide across the ground the way they did, the sound they made, even though that sound effect was later used in things like Star Trek. Anytime I hear that sound, I am right back to that movie, and to this day, it still gives me the creeps. I love it. To me, it's just masterful. Now, this one shot right here, a little sidebar. Since they were supposed to be tripods, they're not actually flying. They're walking on invisible legs, not only because of the aesthetic, but also they wanted a much sleeker look than the original novel. And one of the reasons the models of these things, you used to be, I think they actually made a metal covered one, which I think Pegasus made, which I don't think they make anymore. That really looked good. One of the Glue Troopers submitted one, and even the model combined with that sound will still give you the chills. But they actually shot a light across them and fired sparklers out of the bottom to give it the effect of the legs to make them visible. And the only scene in the movie you can see them in is when they first come out of the crater, and their big reveal. Which, in my humble opinion, this is just me speaking, I think it's one of the best reveals in cinematic history. But it caught the set on fire. So they decided, literally guys out there with the fire extinguishers almost torched the whole place. So, and it may actually be the scene you're seeing right there. But anyway, so for the rest of the movie, they didn't bother with it. They just, he says they're walking on some sort of magnetic legs and blah, blah, blah. So a little exposition there Gene Barry does. But there was something about that, the Marines in the bunkers and everything, and getting ready to fight and the things coming out. There was just something about it that I absolutely loved. Maybe because I saw it when I was a little kid. I'm glad they remade the movie, and the remake was probably a little closer to the actual book. This movie was very different. The book, you see it from the point of view of a person like you did with Tom Cruise in the 2005 movie, which was excellent. I love that terrifying horn sound that they made. It was great because, here I am, a grown man watches the theater, and I'm like, Jesus, That was the first.
What does anybody ever know what happened to the original studio models from?
Yes,
this movie?
I do. I know what happened to the original studio models.
Cool, enlighten us.
Okay, but I'm going to break your heart.
Oh no, it's got a bad ending.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. It's not like they threw them away. They were actually made out of brass. They were extremely heavy, and they were very large. And somewhere I found a photo of the actress who was in the movie, who's still alive, by the way. In fact, she had a cameo in the 2005 movie with Gene Barry.
And Sheridan.
Ann Sheridan, thank you. I have a picture of her on set, and she said, even with the technicians just moving the things, gliding them, because they were hanging by steel wires, because they were very heavy and they had lights in them and controls and everything, and robotics to move the heads. It was all done in real time. She said that just watching those things glide over the miniature set with no sound and with all the special effects guys, it was still kind of creepy. They were that effective, especially with the dark backdrops and the mood setting. Well, when they were done with the movie, and they only made a few of these things. I want to say they made 3 of them. I'm probably wrong. Somebody out there probably knows and can correct me. But what happened was the Boy Scouts...
Chuck says they're made out of copper.
I'm sorry, did I say brass? Copper. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're correct. It was copper.
Close,
but no banana for the max. Anyway, the Boy Scouts, there was a copper shortage. The Boy Scouts were doing a copper drive. So they gutted them and donated them to the Boy Scouts to be melted down. So hooray for the Boy Scouts, but none of them survived. The ones they made for the later TV show were fiberglass. 1 or 2 of those are still around, but nobody cares. And they didn't have moving parts. Everything was fixed. If you remember in the 90s, they made the short-lived TV show. Turned out the aliens weren't dead. They were just hibernating. And I was like, this makes a better movie than TV show. But anyway, that's what happened to them. But to me, this is one of the top parts of Hollywood, and it was one of the most terrifying things I saw as a kid. Every time this came on TV, I watched it. I've got it on DVD. One of my favorite scenes is where they drop the nuke. I actually used the soundtrack from that when I did my Max's Models video some years ago called, was it the Exodus video, which is still out there. We're just using models and everything in still pictures to sort of, but in that one I deliberately did not identify what had happened. No, like was it monster, was it aliens? And I deliberately kept it vague so that whoever was watching could determine for themselves, and sort of let their minds fill in the gaps. Was it a communist invasion? Was it aliens from outer space? Was it a monster? But I used, when I did the thing where they nuke the city, and all that was done in my garage, by the way, on a 4x8 sheet of press board, and it was all reusing for my Godzilla. Ken, you remember when you did the Godzilla versus the Wehrmacht?
Oh yeah.
That was all from that same set. I just remodded it, and man, I got a lot of mileage out of that 4x8 piece sheet of wood. I mean, I kept that thing for a couple of years. I just re-paper mache it and make another set. And I imagine that's why I love the guys at AIP so much. It's because because here I am making movies in my garage, and I realized they were only a couple of steps above me, and they were making a living at it. So God bless them.
Yeah, back in the early days, yeah, they use whatever they get their hands on, pretty close to what you were doing.
Steve, could you, for the folks out there who may not know, could you tell them what AIP was?
AIP was a company that was formed in early 50s by Jim Nicholson, who was a promotions manager for one of the major motion picture studios, and Samuel Arkoff, who was an attorney. And Nicholson used to do the promotions for one of the major studios. He got together with Arkoff, and they decided that they could make very low-budget movies that they could sell to the theater people, and the kids would love it because they felt that the new and upcoming customer was the teenage market, which they were right. And Nicholson would come up with the titles, the concept, and he would go out and sell these movies that were not yet made to the movie theaters, and then they'd go back and make them.
And they did a lot of the Edgar Allan Poe stuff, right?
They did all the Edgar Allan Poe stuff. They signed Vincent Price to a contract for X amount of dollars a year, and he had to do so many movies a year, and they did the Poe stuff. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is they did all those Frankie Avalon and Ned Funicello movies.
Now, can you tell them real quick, because Vincent Price is a household name, but a lot of people are unaware of what had happened to his career and why he was doing movies like this.
Well, Vincent Price he'd worked for some of the major studios in the 40s, and he'd done very well, but he never got into the leading man position, and he found that rather frustrating. So his first movie that he was really a star was The House of Wax.
Which was a hit, if I'm not mistaken.
Which was made in 3D.
Ah, okay.
And he followed that up with, I believe it was called The Mad Magician or whatever. And then he just transitioned into doing these horror movies. The one that really established him as a major, major, major star of the genre was House on Haunted Hill.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that just made him, huge. Then he did The Tingler, he did The Bat, and then they did all of those Poe movies. And then he went to England, and he did Dr. Phibes, and he did Madhouse and a couple of other movies, Bitter Blood, over in England.
Oh, you're going to love this.
He was a well-known art collector.
Uh-huh.
And he also was a consultant for Sears on artwork that they sold through the Sears stores.
Really?
Yeah.
Sears sold artwork?
Yes.
Well, you're gonna love this. I just found this in real time while you were telling that story. I'm gonna post it here as quick as I can get this up here. But Monsters in Motion makes a kit of Vincent Price in the Tingler.
Ooh.
Hold on, I just down. I gotta switch glasses here.
Top 5 said the Tingler sent me into therapy.
You real quick, you want to tell them about the Tingler?
The Tingler was a movie. Price played a research scientist, and he was married to a rich woman, and she was relatively unfaithful, and she wanted him to do other things besides research. But he hit upon the fact that there was this thing that was in each person's body called the tingle, and when you would be frightened, the tingler would be attached to your spine, and when you would scream, he would sort of let go and become unconscious. So he takes one of these tinglers out of his unfaithful wife, and he has it in his lab, and it escapes. Well, William Castle, who produced the movie, who also did House on Haunted Hill, he was the master of showmanship. He wired seats randomly in the theater.
Oh, I remember hearing about this.
Where the Tingler was playing. And in the part in the movie when the Tingler escapes and he's in a movie theater, they would hit the button and it would vibrate the seats and people would just freak out.
You think?
They would just freak out. Now, if you ever saw the movie Matinee with John Goodman...
Yes, I did. I love that movie.
William Castle. That's who he was.
Okay. Because he was personally going around and, taking it. Because people, you got to explain, a lot of folks, younger folks, probably people under 40, don't remember that sometimes movies were literally, the production house would take the movie to a theater and show it, and the actors would be in the lobby and that kind of stuff. Yep. God, those were different times.
Yep. But Castle was the master. He did 13 Ghosts, and it was in sort of 3D, and everybody got a pair of glasses, and that was the only way you could see the ghosts in the original 13 Ghosts.
That's bloody clever.
Yeah. It was all about the gimmick.
We're talking about the Tingler.
In the house on Haunted Hill, in the scene where Vincent Price has the skeleton in the basement and forces his wife into the pit of acid. In the theater, from the side of the screen, a skeleton came out and was on a pulley and went up to the balcony and then went back into the screen.
Ha! Yeah, I bet they had a few people that had accidents over that.
Hey, you can't beat. That's clever. It really is. It was a hook. It was something that was very different, but people remembered it.
So the only thing like that I remember was here's a picture of the house on Haunted Hill. The only one like that I remember was when I went to see the movie Midway and Earthquake. They had Sensorround.
Yep.
And I'll let you describe it. I remember the gigantic speakers in the back of the theater.
Sensorround was really it was surround sound with giant speakers. And when they would have the parts in the movies where it was the earthquake on Earthquake or the attack in Midway, and they turn on and the whole theater shook. And the concept was it should make you feel like you were there. Meanwhile, I'll tell you something. The next time you go to L.A. and you're going to meet with Mike,
I'll hopefully be next week.
I will send you the address of the house. It's the house on Haunted Hill.
Okay.
It's up in the hills by Griffith Observatory in the Los Feliz section of L.A.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same house they used in The Rocketeer. That was Timothy Dalton's house.
Right. Okay. The The thing I was remembering is that they also went to Griffith Observatory in The Rocketeer. That's where he met the Nazis. You know, tell me, Eddie, they pay him dollars or Deutschmarks?
Yeah.
And
that's where they filmed The War of the Colossal Beast.
Oh, okay.
Was up at Griffith Observatory. I mean, they filmed so many movies up in Griffith Observatory, it's not even funny.
Well, it does kind of, you know, I mean, that place does have the look.
Rebel Without a Cause.
Yep.
They filmed up there.
It's been used in movies great and small.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to talk to Mike, see if that's something we could do, because I've always kind of wanted to go there just because of that historical significance. And, but Towering Inferno, since you brought it up, it reminded me of something, that the Towering Inferno was a movie that was made when the disaster flicks were big. Yep. And it dawned on me that what happened was disasters sort of supplanted monsters, you know, as the...
Yes.
And, okay, let's see what disaster... The one that kicked it off was a Poseidon Adventure. Ship capsizes. Towering Inferno and Earthquake. Towering Inferno model. I wonder if that would sell.
You know how we say that toys and models mimic the popular trends of the time?
Of course.
When the Towering Inferno and Earthquake came out, Remco made a toy that was called Earthquake Tower. And it looked like the Towering Inferno, and you had a lever, and you moved the lever, and the building would shake like it was in an earthquake, and it would fall apart.
Yeah.
And I remember saying,
I'm not. You know, I think I remember that toy.
Yeah.
The one thing that when I saw that movie that infuriated me was when the helicopter tries to land and the people run at it.
Yep.
And it causes the pilot to have to pull away, but because of they're talking about we can't get down because of super high winds, which actually made sense because I know helicopters and they do have wind limitations, and it is, you know, and they were trying and it was a Navy chopper, and the Navy actually helped them. I believe those were real Navy helicopters they were using, and the pilot tries to, you know, pull away when they do, but he clips a rotor blade, crashes, blows up, and I was like, you idiots! This should have killed all of them. I was just so mad at those people that panicked. I wanted to shoot them. And then I watched it again, and you see it go over, and you realize it's just like a paper mache helicopter. You know, the skin wrinkles. Like, that's not a real helicopter. Yeah. But the other scenes are
the scene I remember from that movie is when those people got in the elevator and it could only go down. And they were all escaping, and you know they put that one woman in there.
Yeah.
And got halfway down, and then something exploded, and she burst out the window. Well, if you look, you don't even have to look real close. The handrail that went in front of that window was gone.
Yeah.
There's handrails everywhere else except for that one piece of glass that she just happened to fly through.
It's funny you should mention that, Ken, because not that long ago I was at a crew hotel which had one of those outdoor elevators, and I was thinking of that scene in the movie, and I knocked my knuckles, and that's like half-inch thick Lexan or something. You're not going through that.
No, it was totally staged and stupid and unnecessary.
I thought the fireman was going to bite it, the one that was on top of the elevator just dangling, but they wound up getting all the way down and rescue him. Like, oh, they did that just to jerk our string. You know, since they didn't kill him, they had to kill somebody else because it's a movie.
Let me ask you a question. Maybe somebody in the audience knows. I remember the previews where this says, the movie is so big that it took 2 production studios to bring it to life. Now, I know that's full of crap. Somebody screwed up probably somewhere, and the rights got confused, and they had to do, and 2 production studios had to do it because, I don't know, maybe something's going on there. Maybe somebody will know.
Set the first one on fire.
Well, Ken, that is what they refer to as Hollywood spin.
I'm sure somebody screwed up somewhere. I'm just wondering if anybody out there knew what it was.
Oh, I don't know what caused that, but it probably was some kind of budget concern. But okay, I'm looking for a picture here real quick. Let's see, where was that? Trips, Las Vegas, Mike and Jim.
Oh, the other thing about that movie that kind of, the solution to put the fire out was to blow up the water tank up on the very top.
Yeah, water tanks that would no doubt have had nozzles. You could just open them up and let it flow down and do the same thing. Which, by the way, all tall buildings like that, since the Empire State Building, have had to have those water tanks for just that reason. Ta-da! But I do need to point something out. That just so you understand Hollyweird, this is a place where you can drive to your local SK gas station and see a bunch of tanks parked out front because everybody in LA has some kind of movie prop sitting in their driveway. It's that town is about that industry. When you can find an M5 Stewart, an M4 Sherman, an M41 Walker Bulldog, a steam locomotive, an early 60s Fairlane 500, and 2 DUKW Ducks in a gas station parking lot, you know you're near Hollyweird.
And they're probably there for an oil change.
What's that? Yeah.
They're probably there for an oil change.
Well, they are just 1940s vehicles.
Here we go. Somebody knows. How about that? Garfield Smith says there were 2 novels written, The Glass Tower Inferno and the Tower. Each studio had the rights to one of the books. Instead of competing, they pooled their resources.
Garfield for the win.
How about that? I told you somebody would know.
And not only I'm not surprised somebody knew, I'm not surprised it was Orange Tabby. The man is I tell you what, Steve, you and Garfield get together and write a book.
That would probably be pretty interesting.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I feel a little humbled and very honored that this eclectic band of glue troopers that we have, which is global. I mean, we've got guys in New Zealand, Canada, the UK, Europe, just all over the map, all over the globe, and it's wonderful. The internet, for as much as we gripe about these new kids and their newfangled toys, the internet has made possible things like this. I'm sitting here in my little office in Jacksonville, Florida, chatting with 120 people all over the globe. I would love to have a globe right here that had a little light to show me where every glue trooper is at. In fact, guys, just type in real quick where you're at. Everybody, type in where you're at. Well, Garfield, I know you're in Kitchener, so that's okay. But go ahead. I know where a few of you are at because you give me all this cool stuff that I've got stacked up here. And it's funny, Mike Machat and I were having dinner the other day. We were talking about YouTube and the ups and downs of YouTubing. And I don't monetize my channel. I want to make one point very, very, very clear. I am keenly aware of how lucky I am. What? No.
That's specific. JM said Earth.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it. It's a win. Maine, Phoenix, Wisconsin, New York, Plymouth, Orlando, Burlington, Iowa, Burlington, Ontario, Canada. Don't confuse them. Oklahoma, Vegas, Los Angeles. Hey, Rob, I'm going to be out there next week. Pitt, Lance Ravel's Tallahassee, near my hometown of Quincy. Dallas, Chesney, Casper. Okay, Michigan. TUS, I guess that's Tucson. Northeast Pennsylvania. Vermont, Vestal, New York. Oak City. Jeff, Ohio.
Sioux Falls.
Shelton, Connecticut. Beacon, New York. Ohio. Burbank. College Point, New Hampshire. Fayetteville. Sioux Falls, Steve, probably Ohio, The Office, Scranton, The Office, PA, Clarksville, Tennessee, James. I was based in 101st, right down the road at Fort Campbell. OC, Orange County, California. Nolens. I do occasional Nolens overnight. The message is held. Oh, let me see. Held for review. What did the crowd say that they held for review? Come to Wisconsin, have a Brad in the crowd. I got my ass kicked in Wisconsin. New Mexico, Fort Lauderdale. Well, Barry and I have had dinner a couple of times. We know Barry. Mass. I go up to Mass. I got friends up in Sharon. Carlos Bear, Claxton, Georgia. Well, you're not far from Tallahassee, Quincy. I've been to Claxton. Louisville, Kentucky. Been there many times. Vestal, New York. 3 hours north of Babylon. Saw the movie Babylon. Cool movie, but didn't to be so gross. Hey, Barbara Lane. Leanne. Barbara Lane?
Haven't seen anybody from out of the country yet.
Well, I know. There are a bunch
They're
of
all
Canadians
asleep.
here. Yeah, that's true, kid. And this was kind of, by the way, I got, as usual, I have to give a big shout out to Paul Adams down in New Zealand. He's been sending me a bunch of stuff. At some point, when I have a lot of time off, I'm going to make some videos based on a ton of research that Paul Adams has done and sent to me. It's just more stuff in the queue. It's like having stuff in the stash.
Floral City.
Steve's on depends on which pocket the coin is taken from. Just watched language. Floral City. I think is it Floral City or Floral City? We got quite a few here in Florida. The starry
That's a good idea. You ought to get a map of the world and put pins in.
Winter Park. I'm in Orlando all the time. Anyway, the thing I'm really happy is that between everybody, when we crowdsource stuff, usually somebody knows the answer off the top of their head. But all of us are, and I have had the opportunity to meet a few people at Modelpalooza and JaxCon. I've really been fortunate to visit with Trey and Fran and Barry, and I bumped into a couple of Glue Troopers. Bumped into a couple at Hurricane Hobbies that came through. And Ian tells me once in a while that, and by the way, hey Ian, and Kieran, hope you're doing well. Hope you had a good birthday. But he says once in a while he gets somebody that blows through and they're like, they came there because they saw this channel. And I cannot tell you how fulfilling that is to know that I'm able to help the hobby a little bit, because we all know that this hobby has had its ups and downs since the 70s. But, to kind of reiterate a point that we've made before, what would you say, Steve, the golden era of models was 65 to 75?
Oh, I'd say it was more like late 50s to mid 70s.
Okay, we'll go with that. So we'll say 58 to 74, just to have numbers. I remember in the late 60s, about 8, 9 years old, that the local dime store, and just to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine here for a second, we're talking Quincy, Florida, Jerkwater Town, the Panhandle of Florida, 20 miles northwest of Tallahassee, mostly west of Tallahassee, down Highway 90. And I say Jerkwater, it was actually a pretty nice little town, but, 10,000 people was about as big as it ever got. So there were 3 places I could buy models. The main one was the local. There were 2 dime stores, McCrory and Christo's. And I think it was Christo's usually had the models. And I've told you guys before, we all have our young memories that are so golden to us, are so important. And in my case, that's one of them, because we had the models. Literally, if I was standing looking at where they kept the models, if I turned around, that was the hot dog kiosk. And this is back when I'm like 7, 8 years old, and I thought you had to have a college degree to work a hot dog stand in Quincy, Florida. So, let's keep a little perspective here, folks. Anyway.
Come a long way since then, haven't you?
And if I went to the other dime store, which I think was McCrory's, the models were all the way in the back, on the very back end at the back of the store, almost like they didn't want you to find them. Now, what made it different was, and I'm probably getting the 2 confused, because my brother actually worked at one of them for a while to make money to go on his jamboree. My brother went all over the world before he'd even gone to college because of the Boy Scouts. He'd gone to like Japan on a jamboree in like 69 or 70, but world jamboree. But sorry, digress. I got into model build like any kid. I was the middle brother. Like any kid, you're kind of not only influenced by your parents, but also your older siblings. My older brother built models, and of course, when you're 4 or 5 years old, your older brother's the cool kid, because he's 9 or 10 or 12. He builds models and rides a bicycle. So
Bay Meadows in Jacksonville? Natasha?
Oh,
wait a minute. I lived on Bay
Whoa,
Meadows.
Natasha.
Wait, what are you talking? Whoa! I lived on Bay Meadows. I
I
lived
used
in
to drive through Bay Meadows.
Natasha. I lived in Bay Meadows Apartments, right across from what used to be the Omaha Steakhouse, right on Bay Meadows. I lived there when I worked at Blue Cross in '96. Son of a gun. Well, get down to Hurricane Hobby sometime and say hi to Ian and Kieran and me if I'm there. You got my email?
let us know where you're going. We'll wait for you.
You mean lay an ambush? But anyway,
Meanwhile, I think we have to clarify the period of best time of the model industry. When I say the mid to late 50s to the late 70s, I'm talking volume.
right. Okay. Now,
Because there are many great kits now that there weren't then, but the volume is nowhere near what it was per kit.
okay, this is where I was going. According to what I read about a interview that was held by Lou and Royal Glazer over at Revell, by 1971, they were catching heat for making so many military models, and Lou told the people point blank that he would love to make other stuff because he and Royal went to Berkeley for God's sakes, right? They would love to make educational stuff, which they tried to move into, and so did Monogram, but it didn't sell.
It flopped huge.
Big time.
The money he spent on those Dr. Seuss kits,
He got
which were a
clobbered.
total bomb, was like the Edsel of the kit industry.
And when he passed in, 71 or 72?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know if Lou smoked?
I don't know.
Just about everybody in the 40s and 50s
Jim
did.
would know.
Well, the only reason I ask is Lou got cancer and died, I think, in 72. That guy was a workaholic. According to his wife, he would come home and literally fall asleep at the dinner table.
Yes.
And look, I know Jim has understandably great memories of Royal Glazer, and I have nothing but respect for the woman. But the general consensus is, although they tried to groom her to replace Lou when they knew he was sick, she just did. Lou had the
Lou had the drive.
not only the drive, he had the understanding.
Lou was the only model kit executive who sought out independent consulting companies and studied trends about what was happening in the country and demographics and all that kind of stuff. And that went into the decisions that he made about what kits to make. He was very ahead of his time in terms of running it like a real business.
Right. Whereas Aurora was, that looks cool, let's make one.
Oh, look at this in the paper. Let's make it. I want it by Friday.
Yeah, Andy Yanchus told us about time. I mean, he talked about Joe Giamarino walking up to him with two pictures of De Tommaso Mangusta. Hey, Andy, how quick can you make one of these?
Yeah.
I got two pictures here, and that's what they made it from.
That was Andy's first job, was to carve a body of the De Tommaso Mangusta for the model motoring slot car sets.
Oh, God, I miss days like that. Whereas the guys at Monogram, who were always in the black financially, were very conservative with their money. And, Revell, Aurora, and Monogram, the three of them they all operated on a different modus operandi, and they were all successful. Yep. And you think about companies like Renwall, who make great products. A lot of people I know are Renwall fanatics. They love the working stuff on them and the attention to detail. But Launer just couldn't keep the business going, and he made other stuff. He started off making like plastic silverware.
Right.
Okay, if you guys will pardon me, and by the way, we've talked about the monster stuff and everything. We're kind of in whatever you want to talk about, So I guess not saying the live stream is over, but the stuff I had to talk about, we've covered. So now we're just kind of into the usual post whatever gab session, because we're here for the kicks and giggles of it and have a good time, and no one's keeping score. So Lawner had made these really great models, but Lawner, who did Renwall, was typical of a lot of companies, including Aurora, that were actually just plastics companies that drifted into models. Monogram was a model company making wooden models that moved eventually towards plastic in stages with their speedy builds and that stuff, and the two different mindsets had a lot to do with where the companies were financially. Aurora had always made money, and Monogram was very good about always making money. But Revell was different. Revell, Glazer was a sharp business guy, and I've got a lot of respect for him. And I finally got to actually listen to him speak when I found an old episode of, I think it was The Tell the Truth, that he appeared on. And man, the guy had an incredibly deep baritone voice, and he wasn't that tall. I was like, interesting. It was just interesting to hear. This is the voice of Revell. And I can't get as deep of my voice as he got just speaking normally, which made me wonder if he smoked, which, anyway. But Revell, Glazer started off, ironically, making stuff for Revlon. And, a Revlon exec, Diker, wound up running Aurora. It's like, but Glencoe, the kit model company, and I know I'm bouncing around, but there's a reason. I had a chance to talk a couple of times with the gentleman who runs Glencoe, and I must be getting old because I'm having more and more trouble remembering names of people that I've spoken with, and that bothers me. But anyway, he mentioned that at one point in, I think it was like the United States, was like 1,500 plastic, injection mold companies. And now there's like 150, and only 50 of them are really of any size. But the thing is that what
Nathan brought up an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Max, it's interesting that when we were kids and teenagers, we just thought of these as models and model kits and toys. We never gave a second thought to all the energy, blood, sweat, and tears that gone into making these things.
Nor should we have. It wasn't we were the consumer. We didn't care about the. Ken, you remember when you, me, and my buddy Norman sat down, you were talking about how much work you put into your point of sale program and why you should charge this and I told you that, and we're going back 20 years, 30 years, but I was like, Ken, the consumer does not care how many hours of blood, sweat, and toil you put into your point of sale program. All they care about is what it costs, and can they get one from a competitor cheaper.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that painful but true, but it's exactly what you're getting at. We built these models. We didn't give a second thought to people. And Nick Argento, Nick, I'm sorry if you happen to see this. Nick Argento over at Glencoe was telling me that, because he's been in the injection molding business, his family was in it before he was born, so he's been in it his whole life. And he's up in Worcester. And he was telling me that we have like 1/10 the number of injection molding companies that we used to have, because let's face it, manufacturing America has largely died off. So the kit model companies, a lot of them were just plastic injection molders who drifted into the model industry because it was an ancillary thing for them to do. Some of them sold their molds off, got out of the business, but still existed making stuff for other people. Aurora was a plastics company that made a bunch of toys. They made the AFX. They made all kinds of stuff. Models was only one thing that they did, but at one point they were the third largest kit model company in the world. When Diker took over and decided, like Abe Shikes, he was going to, let's go into toys and screw the models, and we all know how that ended. But Monogram was the opposite of that. They were a model company that started moving into styrene as it became the new dynamic. And to their credit, until they sold out to Mattel, they were in good shape. And I understand why they sold out to Mattel. They were afraid, changes in the industry, they were going to get picked off by somebody bigger or run into bankruptcy. They thought joining a company like Mattel would ensure their future. and Besser and Reeder made a decision that I can understand. It just turned out not to be the right one. In my opinion, I think if they'd never joined Mattel, they'd have been better off. And then Monogram winds up changing hands, I want to say 9 times in 15 years. But even though Revell owns them, well, sort of, that gets extremely murky.
Revell owns part of them. Atlantis owns part of them.
Well, the thing is that Monogram bought Revell in, I think, 83, I want to say. Monogram bought Revell, but Revell had a big international presence. There were tax implications, so they made Revell the dominant name, even though Monogram was the acquiring company. Very much the same way that America West Airlines, for the few of you who even remember that airline or know about it, bought a bankrupt U.S. Air and incorporated them. But even though U.S. Air was in bankruptcy and broke, America West was a name that only people in the American Southwest were familiar with. So they took their logo and their image and became U.S. Air, even though it was really America West, rebranded as U.S. Air. And then they did the same thing with American. American went broke, and the U.S. Air, which was really America West, bought American and is now American, but it's Doug Parker and the U.S. and the old America West staff that were running the show. But the consumer doesn't care about these things. Monogram did the same thing, buy Revell, but take their name because it has an international presence, and blow it up real big, and blah, 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 and then things go bad, and this happens, and it goes through. Now, Gearbox Toys owns them, Hallmark Cards owns them. I mean, God, they went through so many hands. And just treated them down until finally they're what they are today. And God, it's so sad. It's like watching your...
Steve.
What?
Hey, Steve, I got a question for you.
Certainly, Ken.
A thought just occurred to me, and see if you can confirm this. Because model kits, they weren't selling the volume that they used to, I'm assuming they went with the higher quality, more expensive kits to make up for the lack of the volume?
Ooh, let me answer that. Let me answer that. Yes, no. Let me answer that. Yes, no. Go ahead.
Oh, it's a multifaceted answer. The first thing is the cost of materials went up usually. That's the first thing. Second thing is a lot of these old molds that people had for, a variety of kits, the companies started to charge licensing fees that they didn't charge before. And the third thing is that the mold costs are so expensive that the kits had to be expensive. So, but to that point, they made better models. But the net result of that is they sold fewer.
That is why a kit costs $50 instead of $15 today. Ken, to address your very issue, the P-51B Mustang by Monogram in 1/48 scale that I bought as a kid for $1.04 tax, because when you're a kid you keep track of those things when you have a 30-cent a week allowance. And like I said, just enough left over for a hot dog. I wonder why I'm so big, but I digress. Anyway, so I did the math. Adjusted for inflation, that kit should cost about $7.50 today. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, between 1969 and today, American money is roughly 1 to 7. But the kit sells for about $22 if you find it at Michael's. Now, that means that it has not quite, but almost doubled in cost. And I attribute that to the loss of the economy of scale. They probably make $15,000 a year as opposed to $150,000 a year. Just guessing on that. But one of the things is that there was a company down in Mexico called Ladella, which is basically the Revell company in Mexico. They leased a lot of Revell's molds. And I did the history of Ladella. It's out on the channel if you guys want to go see it. But the gentleman who ran it, of course, unfortunately, since passed away, just old age. But someone email or left a comment or emailed me, but they told me that they had actually a chance to visit the Lodella factory. They had like 10 presses going full steam all the time. And I did not realize that making kit models in Mexico, that there was such an active kit model scene down in Mexico, but there is, or there was back then. But if you go on eBay, you'll find a 1/32 scale Revell Stuka, for example, for $50, or a P40 for $50. If it's Lodella, it's usually going for $20 or $25. At least that was last time I looked, which is some years ago. And wait a minute. They literally came out of the exact same molds, had the exact same box art, instructions, the works. It just says Lodella instead of Revell. But there's, I guess, a stigma because it's made down in Mexico. But I'm like, the kits are just as good. So if you want to build a 1/32 scale Revell Stuka, go get a Lodella kit, because it'll probably be cheaper, and it's the exact same kit. And Mike Machad, I believe, did 10 box arts for Lodella, including a DC-9.
Yeah, he did.
And I can tell you guys right now, I actually built one. I would buy a Lodella kit and build it in a heartbeat, because they use the Revell molds. There's nothing wrong with them. And you don't have the guilt of building a vintage Revell kit either. Those kits are still floating around somewhere. The molds. They're still floating around somewhere.
Let me illustrate the point. You're familiar with the Snoopy kits that Atlantis has?
I built one. I built that and the Red Baron kit.
They have the Red Baron. They have Snoopy in his
electric motor. You just hit the prop.
Race car. They have Snoopy ice hockey, and they have Snoopy and Joe Cool Surfer. And there's two more. There's Snoopy in his motorcycle, and there's Snoopy high wire area acrobat. When those kits came out in 1970 and 71, when Monogram was bought by Mattel, they were million-seller kits. They sold 1 million pieces or more of each one. Now they're 20,000-piece kits.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is.
Yeah.
Very much so. And
but that's the reality of it.
Now,
it's not that they're any worse of a kit. It's not that they're the wrong kit for the hobby industry. It's just that the market has gotten smaller.
Yep. Okay, I got you.
But ironically, there is one type of kit that has exploded in the past 10 years or more, and that is the Gundams. They sold 35 million of those things.
Yep, Gundam are like on fire. And they're very expensive, and they're very involved, but they sell like they're free.
Now, I have to explain something, Ken. The Gundam kits, first off, are extremely well engineered and very well produced. They're high fidelity. If you've got a decent pair of snippers, you don't even need glue on most of them. I built one.
I saw that one you were putting together.
Right.
The pieces fit together like unbelievably well.
But you have to. Yeah. They have good instructions, but you have to be very careful because a lot of parts look very similar, and it's real easy to get one in backwards because they have such weird shapes. Now, Eduardo has all of my Gundams except one. My son Lou grew up with that stuff. He loves it, but he doesn't build models. So every time I build one, it magically disappears and ends up on his shelf. And I'm glad it's got a good home. He can appreciate it. I do have the first one I built, which was sent to me by a glue trooper, and the only one that ever really weathered and put some battle damage on. It's up on the sci-fi shelf, but he's got all the others, including that what was it, Ultimate, or the one with all the springs in it, the really big one. Oh, God, he loved that. I remember when I dropped it off to him in the condo, he was like, "Oh yeah." Anyway, sorry. The point I'm getting at is that he made a comment that explained everything in a very simple comment. He goes, "You got to remember, Dad, I grew up with this," and I'm thinking, that explains everything. All of us are born in the 50s or 60s. We all grew up knowing guys who fought in the Second World War. We grew up watching movies like The Dam Busters, The Battle of Britain, Tora. And saw these at Mosquito Squadron. We saw these movies at the theater, all right? So these airplanes, these tanks, and we all grew up around 50s and 60s, 70s vintage cars. So these were the things we grew up with. They were part of our soul. And just as he grew up, much later with, the Gundam and all that stuff. So that was all part of it. So the reason that Gundam sells so well, despite the Bandai doing an outstanding job on them, the reason is that they have a young audience that grew up with them, and they're in their building phase the way we were in ours. And that sort of explains why they sell 35 million to most kit model companies selling 3,500. They don't remember Mercury Atlas or Mustangs or Sabre Jets or, Edsels
there are dedicated Gundam kit stores that are owned by Bandai and run in America throughout the United States.
Yes. Although Hurricane is getting some Gundam kits, if you go down to Mythical Mountain, which I think I did a video on a while back, that's when I got yelled at for touching the Godzilla statue. No, that's it. Oh, sorry. Fine. It's only a $1,200 figurine, so I guess I can't really fault them for that. And I don't want to give any bad press just because they yelled at me. But the proper thing you don't snap. You got to tell young people, you don't snap at old people and don't touch that. What you tell them is, just a reminder, sir, if you break it, you bought it. And that's a good way to make a sale because good chances are I'd probably break it. But anyway, point I'm getting at is that they have an entire wall of Gundams. I'm not bitter. And the stuff lies off the shelves. So now Hurricane not only is doing their regular vendor, but I think they got Stevens also, so they can probably get some of that stuff. But Ken, one of the things that has come out of this smaller audience, and you got to remember, we're talking about numbers of vintage kits. When Tamiya puts out something, or Hasegawa or Aoshima, their numbers are much higher because they have a world audience, an established reputation, but also new molds. And man, you put that placard new mold on a model, and that gets people's eyebrows because to raise. That gets their attention. Because most new molds today are so insanely crisp. There are a lot of Trey over Trey's Models just did an unboxing of an ME 163 Comet, and he was showing the moldings and everything, and he's saying they look really, really good. The Walters engine, whoever it is made that engine for that thing, comes with a detailed engine, which would make a nice side display. But the new kits are usually so insanely detailed and crisply made. Now they're expensive because it cost them $100-200 to make these molds. They got to sell a lot of kits to get that money back. But you're getting something for your money. And if you're a person that takes their time with a kit, think about it. Well, let's pro-con this thing financially. Let's say that you spent $50, $100 on a new 1/32 scale model airplane. Okay? If you're the meticulous model builder who only builds when you're in the mood, it'll take you a month to finish that thing. You'll dump $30 in supplies in it. Okay? So for $130, you entertain yourself for a month, and you have something to show for it forever. So kit model building is still a very economical hobby in that regard. I mean, that's hardly an afternoon out playing golf. By the way, guys, side note, go to Trey's Models and check out the work he did on that 112 scale motorcycle. It is phenomenal. If he doesn't win the gold with that model, there's no justice in the world. And at the end, he interviews the guy who actually rode that very motorcycle, competed on that very bike. It's a good video. It's a longer one than his usual. Probably it's about 26 minutes, but it's a good video. The Ming Comet, that's it. And he says it's a nice kit. Because Ming, Dragon, these companies, I mean, they've got the time. They've got their minions down in the, in the basement, under hot lamps and, etching out every little detail based on historical photos. It's no worry, Trey, you earned it, man. The work you did on that motorcycle, that's genuinely impressive. And I tell you what.
Nathan said something interesting.
What's that?
Should I go? Oh, okay. He said, how it Max for little plastic models to be so small in size, they do start to consume larger and larger sections of your dwelling. Oh, that is so true for Max.
Yeah. And okay, since he brought that very point up, there's some, I guess, as good a time as any to cover the because we're going to be wrapping up here shortly. Let me go ahead and shift gears from models to what's going on in Max's models world, so you guys can understand. I wasn't going to say anything.
Speaking of which, somebody asked you to bring up the October build.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me open that real quick. Okay, let's see. Updated build schedule. It's loading. Okay, October. Let's see. Okay, ugly aircraft, auto, or Halloween build due at the end of October. Any ugly aircraft, any ugly car, or a Halloween build, and ugly is entirely up to you. It can be a regular model that turned out ugly, or it can be, the idea was to be something ugly like a Fairy Gannet or something, one of these really ugly airplanes, or anything by Bloom and Voss. Whatever you think ugly is.
Kids, guys.
Edsel definitely. Edsel counts automatically. Or what was that? What was it, Steve? The 64 Dart, the one that cost Virgil Exner's job?
Yeah, 63. Yeah, true.
So ugly auto, ugly aircraft, or a Halloween build. So anything that's Halloween-y. And guys, have fun with it. What? What? Somebody said what?
Steve.
Oh.
I didn't say what.
Okay. What? So anyway, I have training, I think, on November 7th. It's going to go for at least till the end of the month. And I guess I can sort of explain what's going on here. You guys know that I was a captain for 17 years on an Embraer 190. And I went first officer on the Airbus 320, 321. Because I only got a few years left of flying, and I want to stay in Orlando, my base, because I live in Jack, so I wouldn't have to go back to commuting, and I was very senior on the bus, and I thought I'd ride this out. Unfortunately, I forgot to remove an old bid for captain on the Airbus in Orlando if I got above the 50% point, and I did. So
basically, you just got promoted against your will.
Well, I just, for lack of attention. So I called them and asked them about it. They said, you bid it, you bought it. And I was like, any chance I could just stay a first officer? And they were like, no, you bid it, you're obligated. It's so I'm going back to captain school. Wish me luck. Hopefully I should be done by the end of November. So I'm back in the books, and hopefully, good Lord willing, the creek don't rise, everything go fine, and at the end of November, I'll be a captain again. On the mighty, mighty Airbus, which I'm starting to warm up to now that I've flown it a few hundred hours, and it's a pretty cool airplane. Like everything, it's got its moments, but, I'm getting a feel for it, so I'm sure everything will be fine. But I just wanted to let you know what is going on. So content between now and the end of the year is going to be a bit more scattered. And that's what's going on there. So, silly me. I actually, if you go over my other web channel, Pilots and Prop Wash, I did a video called The Accidental Captain, which sort of gives us into detail on it. But anyway, oops, I'm glad I didn't throw away any of my captain stuff. Well, that's good because I still got the coats with 4 stripes on them. I don't have to go to the seamstress.
That'll come in handy.
Yeah. Well,
Sluggo says, you'll always be Captain Max to us.
Well, I've been one so long that everybody still uses the title. Kind of is, once you become one, the title sort of sticks for life. Everybody still calls me Captain. No, most people don't even notice I'm wearing 3 stripes now. I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what? It's not that big a deal. It's not the military. But anyway, so I will not be getting much model building done. Everything's kind of on hold. I'll try to crank out videos when I can because this is kind of my escape. But I hope I didn't just jinx it by telling everybody. But, I mean, I don't really anticipate any problems. You know, I've already started studying. That's one reason you guys are seeing less stuff. So that's why the channel will be not dark, but gray for a few months. Anyway, so my schedule next week was the same one I just had, so there won't be a live stream next Saturday, but I will try to do one a week from today on Sunday if I'm here and everything's okay and nothing gets in the way. If you guys have something specific you'd like me to kick off the next live stream with, let me know. This one was kind of because of several people had sent me stuff about the monster kits and everything, and I thought, well, we haven't talked about that in a long time. It'd be fun to kick off with, but after 30 minutes, it's just going to devolve into a gab session anyway, which is why we're all here. It's good fun, man. We're all here to have a good time, not to keep score.
Slego says, "I catch, Captain. The circuits will blow."
One of the best line of movie Strategic Air Command, where old Frank Lovejoy's looking at the new B-47 bomber chomping on a cigar, and the enlisted man, leans over to Jimmy Stewart. He goes, "Sir, the General cigar. He could cause it. The plane might catch fire, explode." Jimmy Stewart just looks at him. "It wouldn't dare."
Wouldn't dare.
There you go. Garfield says we can host while you study.
There you go. Guys, that'll wrap it up for this evening. Like Mike said, here's my Snoopy's the ice hockey kit, courtesy of the boys at Atlantis, and as close as this Florida boy's ever gotten to hockey. I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight and spending some time with us. I want to thank Steve and Ken. A special shout out to Mike Machat over at Celebrating Aviation with Mike Machat for just everything we got to do on my last LA trip. Hopefully I'll get to see him on the next LA trip, because I got the same trip next week, depending on what his schedule holds. If not, they keep us at Redondo Beach. It's not like I can't find something to do there. And a big thanks to Jim for taking us out and showing it. For those who haven't seen it, his buddy Jim took us out and showed us a small fraction of his collection of rather unique and antique desktop display models, a lot of which were actually factory models. Some of them were actually for factory reps to take with them. We never have figured out what that little twin-engine fixed-gear airplane is. It does look like that little British Q6, but somebody made the suggestion. They think it's just something that the statue maker came up with. It may not be a real airplane. I'm inclined to think he's right about that. But I want to thank just everybody, Trey and Fran and Orange Tabby and just the whole gang. Everybody's done so much great stuff for the channel. I'm sorry if I missed you on the shout out. I have been downloading the photos. FYI, real quick, when you guys send me stuff and I'm on the road, I'm trying, if you don't get a reply, I'm not replying because I want to leave that stuff unmarked or mark it as unmarked until I get home and get it downloaded on the computer. I'm trying to be better about managing all the pictures you guys have sent, which are just a lot of great stuff already coming in for the next Viewers Build 45. Have no idea when that'll go up, whenever I get enough pictures. And one-man show here, chief cook and bottle washer. If you sent me pictures before the last Viewers Build and I didn't show them, then please send them again. My apologies for that. So, guys, I'll let everybody say goodnight, and we will sign off for the evening. I'll loop the outro so you guys can chat for a while.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming in.
Good night, everyone. It's always a lot of fun having you guys out there. We ask a question and somebody knows the answer. That just blows my mind that there's that broad of an audience that wants to watch us.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
No, stinking Google.
Well, you guys can see me over here Googling, so you know what I'm doing. But anyway, so Steve, that sign and the Godzilla sign and the Godzilla are going back in the cabinet as soon as we're done here. And the UFO, I still have to paint the little engine nodules. It said to paint them orange, but I looked at a bunch of pictures. Literally more like green on the outlying ones, just orange on the big middle one.
The outline ones are lights, which are green. The middle one is orange.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
That thing that looks like a grid in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
That's the engine that's supposed to be
orange. The crowd says plastic makes insanity endurable.
Well, don't be surprised I put a Pennzoil sticker on it just for kicks and giggles. Okay, guys. Well, once again, everybody, thanks for coming out and spending your evening with us. I hope you had a good evening. I hope you have a wonderful week. Hopefully we'll talk at you next Sunday. And as always, model on.
It began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.
It began with a closed, deserted diner, and a man too long without sleep to continue his journey. It began with the landing of a craft from another galaxy. Now, David Vincent knows that the invaders are here, that they have taken human form. Somehow he must convince a disbelieving world that the nightmare has already begun.
No one would have believed in the middle of the 20th century that human affairs were being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Yet, across the gulf of space on the planet Mars, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded our Earth with envious eyes, slowly and surely drawing their plans against us.